As I mentioned a little bit earlier, today is a family worship, meaning that all of our kids, including our preschoolers, are starting in worship with us today. I'm going to do a little bit of fun stuff at the beginning of my sermon, and then after that, we'll release them with Nicole to do some hands-on activities. For the adults, just so you know what they're going to be doing, they're going to be making some Christmas stockings, and then also putting together some of the candles that we'll be using tomorrow night for Christmas Eve worship. So imagine that tomorrow during Christmas Eve worship, you might be holding one of the candles that the kids actually put together. And then all the kids will come back during the last song. As you all know, we have been talking about different Christmas traditions during this Advent season. We've been thinking about the origins of these different traditions, the history of these different traditions, and then thinking about what kind of meaning can they continue to provide in our own lives. So we started off the series talking about the Advent calendar, those things that have the little doors that we open up and pull out chocolate or little trinkets or names of books or whatever we put behind those little doors. We talked about how a tradition like this helps build expectancy in our life as we wait for the coming of Jesus. The second week we talked about the Christmas tree and the evergreens and how the evergreen branch represents everlasting life in our lives, and how the little lights that we put on the Christmas tree remind us how Jesus is the light of the world for us. Last week, we had our choir present 9 lessons and carols for us, and we focused on carols, the tradition of the carols, and how that brings joy into our lives. And then at 10:30, our children presented their Christmas program to us. Today we are, of course, focusing on the Christmas stocking and where we get this tradition, what this tradition is about, and how it helps us stay focused on giving during the Christmas season. So since we've been through all this, I thought it would be fun to play a little trivia here at the beginning to see how much you all retained. Consider it a game of trivia. It's not a quiz, so you don't have to get all stressed out about it. But I thought this will be fun to do a little review today in trivia. So I'm going to throw some questions up here on the screen, and I want you to be thinking about what your answer might be to these questions. So the first question is, the Advent calendar started by A, making a chalk mark for each day, B, lighting a candle each day, C, both of these, or D, bringing an animal in the house for each day of December. Okay, how many of you say A? Raise your hand. A. How many of you say B? B. How many of you say C? C. How many of you say D? A couple people in the back. Okay. The answer is C. Both of the A and B is the answer. That's how it started, is that you make a little chalk mark by your door or you light a candle each day. Question number 2. The Advent calendar started in which country? Germany, France, Turkey, or South Africa? How many of you say A? How many of you say B? C? D? Oh, okay, you guys got this, yes. The Advent calendar started in Germany. A lot of our Christmas traditions started in Germany. I don't know what it was about these German Lutherans, but knowing that we were once a German Lutheran congregation, we should be celebrating a whole lot of Christmas. Question number 3. Using evergreens to decorate in the cold season predated Christianity. True or false? How many of you say true? How many of you say false? Yeah, predated Christianity. It was done in the Norse tradition, the Scandinavian tradition, Celtic tradition, ancient Egypt, Romans, and lots of other cultures used evergreens during the winter season. Martin Luther added candles to an indoor evergreen after A, seeing his Jewish friends light candles, B, trying to write in the dark, C, seeing stars twinkle through a fir tree, or D, chopping down a cherry tree. How many of you say A? How many of you say B? How many of you say C? Yes. Good. I preached that sermon. You got it. And how many of you say D? Anybody out there? Good. Yes, it is C. Of course it's C. Okay, now you are 9 o'clock worshipers, and you actually didn't get a sermon last week. The 10:30 worshipers got a little sermon last week. So you're going to have to take your guesses on these questions about the carols, because we didn't talk about them last week. So, carols have always been religious songs. How many of you say true? How many of you say false? Right. Yeah, carols actually were not religious songs to start. And our last question. If we were going to be true to the very original carols and how they did the very original carols, you guys are reading ahead. We would only let Dan and Kelly sing, only have the children sing, march in place while singing, or dance in a circle while singing. How many of you say A? Okay, there is something to that. B, C, D. Right. The answer is D, yes. The carols were originally non-religious songs. They were festive songs. They had some folk song nature to them, and people would come together and they would dance and sing in circles. And that's what these were about. Now, letting Dan and Kelly sing actually is part of the history of the Christmas carol. So once carols were actually Christianized, brought into the Christian church, they became really sacred initially, and they only let the clergy actually sing them. And as I said to the 10:30 worshipers last week, good thing we don't have that tradition anymore. You would not just want Dan and I singing these carols. But then they got handed back to the people during the Protestant Reformation. Well, today our tradition is the tradition of the stocking. And like with a lot of these traditions, it is hard to know exactly how this started, what the origins actually are, because there's a lot of folklore, a lot of accuracy, a lot of stories, a lot of passing down the tradition that gets into the mix, and then we just kind of get the tradition as it comes to us. But there is a story of St. Nicholas that is part of the Christmas stocking. St. Nicholas was a bishop a long time ago, and he brought us the Christmas stocking. Santa Claus actually comes from the story of St. Nicholas, too. So before we have the kids head off, I'm going to read a children's story about St. Nicholas and the Christmas stocking. Once upon a time in the land of Myra, Turkey, there lived a beloved bishop by the name of Nicholas. Nicholas was very wealthy and loved giving his money to those in need. Giving secret gifts and money to the poor gave Nicholas great joy. He delighted in surprising people by placing gold coins in shoes left outside overnight. One day, Nicholas heard about a poor old man who had 3 daughters. Without money, the father worried that they wouldn't be able to move out on their own. Nicholas wanted to help this family. So the night before the eldest daughter came of age, he secretly tossed a sack of gold coins into an open window. When the family found the money, they cried with joy because their first daughter was now taken care of. On the night before the second daughter came of age, Nicholas threw another sack of coins into an open window, and her future was now secure too. On the night before the third daughter came of age, the father anticipated the benefactor's arrival and waited by the open window to see who was giving them money. Seeing the father by the window, Nicholas decided to throw the money down the chimney instead. Nicholas always preferred to do his good deeds in secret. The night before her birthday, the daughter had washed her stockings and hung them by the fire to dry. The father and daughter miraculously found the bag of money in her stocking the next morning. Even though Nicholas tried to do all his good deeds anonymously, it wasn't long before people found out about his generosity and in turn started giving gifts to each other in his name. The popularity of secret gift giving spread far and wide. To this day, on December 6th, we celebrate the life of St. Nicholas by leaving our shoes outdoors overnight to see what goodies await us in the morning. Anybody do St. Nicholas Day on December 6th? We also remember the mission of St. Nicholas at the end of each year by helping those in need, donating to the poor, and giving gifts to our children and loved ones, all in the name of St. Nicholas, the wonder worker. The end. Nicole, if you want to head up the center aisle, kids, if you are interested in heading out, if you're comfortable and your grown-up says it is okay, I would invite you to head on out to put some candles together, make a Christmas stocking. When my son was 5 years old, my husband and I were having a conversation with him, and we were talking about Christmas and how it is more important to give than to get during the Christmas season. We were trying to impress on him that Christmas is really about giving, not about getting. And somewhere in his 5-year-old little brain, all the words got mixed up. And he confidently declared to us, "Yes, I get it. Christmas is not about getting, it's about receiving." So this actually has become kind of a family joke in our home. My son is now 17 years old, and he still reminds us that Christmas is not about getting, but about receiving, at least for him. And we joke about it as a family. But I do want to acknowledge that there is a real struggle of trying to transmit the value of giving in this holiday season. And the reason for it is because both giving and getting are intertwined together during this time of year. If somebody is going to be a giver, somebody else is going to be a receiver. And if we're all out there giving gifts, because Christmas is about giving, it means that we're all also going to be getting gifts, right? Giving and getting get intertwined during this Christmas season, and it can make the emphasis actually go to the getting part. Kids in particular feel the greatest effect of this, I think, during this Christmas season. Just because it's the way kids are built. They have a desire to get things when they get marketed and they get targeted. They see all the options of what's out there during the season, and they want this and they want that. That's completely normal for kids during this season. But it also can build this greediness in them, like to acknowledge that this is really what we're up against when we have small children in our home. I was perusing Facebook the other day, and I saw a post by one of the moms of this church, and she was kind of bemoaning this time of year and what this time of year meant for her kids. And she wrote this: "I'm seriously thinking about canceling Christmas this year. I'm surrounded by people who don't understand that Christmas is more than presents and mass consumerism. My kids want and need everything they see." We know this feeling. We know, like, having kids in our midst and how they just think they want and need everything, and how hard it is to instill a value of giving in them when they are being marketed to. But I think adults feel this same effect during this time. Consumerism is rampant in our own lives too. During this time, we are also marketed to. We are also targeted at this time of year. Statistically, we spend more on ourselves during this month than at any other time of year. So it's not just about giving gifts to each other. We're constantly being bombarded about what we need and what we want too, and it's easy to spend the money, put that credit card down for something we want as we're buying Christmas gifts for other people. And I think for some of us, the whole tradition of giving and getting presents can become what Christmas actually is about. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, I loved her dearly. One of the things she would do, though, is after we got done unwrapping the presents, she would turn to her kids and she would say, "How was your Christmas?" As if Christmas was over after the gifts were opened. It was the opening of the gifts that actually defined Christmas. Christmas, when it becomes defined by Santa and stockings and the presents underneath the tree, we know this. We can so easily miss the real meaning of Christmas. I was talking to a group of parents the other night at a Family Grove gathering. It's a ministry where families with small children get together. And we were talking about Christmas traditions and how important they are to our children. How having Christmas traditions can instill values, can transmit values into the lives of children. And kind of off the cuff, I said, if you're going to have traditions, if you're going to spend the time setting up the tradition and doing the tradition, you probably want to make sure that the tradition transmits the values you want to have instilled in your kids. If you're going to do it, pick carefully what you're going to do so that the values that you want get moved into the lives of your kids. There is nothing wrong with Santa. There is nothing wrong with Elf on the Shelf. These are traditions that teach the value of fun, and they are definitely fun. These are fun traditions. But if that's all that we do at Christmas, the only value that gets transmitted is the value of fun. There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to our loved ones at Christmas and having a Christmas tree and having presents underneath and opening them and sharing them with each other. But if that's the only tradition that we have around giving at Christmas time, the only value that we are transmitting is that we should take care of our own. And this is why the story of St. Nicholas is so important. Because the giving that St. Nicholas did was giving that came from the values of compassion and care. This type of giving is deeper than consumerism. It's deeper than fun. It's deeper than taking care of our own. It's deeper than getting kids to behave by telling them that there's going to be an overweight gentleman in a red suit in a sleigh pulled by reindeers coming to their house on Christmas Eve. St. Nicholas's giving is a model of giving. It was giving that was an act of grace. St. Nicholas was actually being the love of God in somebody else's life. Imagine what your gifts might be if every single gift you gave was God's love in somebody else's life. If every single gift you gave represented God's grace in somebody else's life. How would that change how you approached gift giving? Here's an example of that. I was in a family ministry meeting this last week, and we were going around the table sharing Christmas traditions that we do in our family to instill values in our kids. And one of the moms said that she has a Santa who actually delivers give-it-back stockings to their house. And then what the kids do is they fill these bags with toys to give away to kids who are less fortunate than they are. This is an example of a giving tradition that transmits God's love into the life of another. We often think of the wise men as the people in the Christmas story who give gifts. That makes sense, right? Okay, wise men gave. I'm going to go back to trivia. The wise men gave gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Right, they visited Jesus and Mary and Joseph, and that's what they gave. But if you look at the shepherds, there is also gifts that the shepherds are giving in the Christmas story. In just a second, I'm going to be reading the short little section from Luke where the shepherds show up at the door of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus the night that Jesus was born. And here's what I want you to be looking for as I read this little segment. Look for how the shepherds' presence, just their very presence, was a gift to Mary and Joseph. Look for how the shepherds shared the miracle of Jesus with others, how they told others about Jesus, how they were a witness, and how this was a gift to others. And then lastly, pay attention to how Mary responds to these kind of gifts that were given to her. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. Friends, the jewelry, the new clothes, the toys, the new pots and pans, the candles, the blankets, all that stuff that we are going to be giving and receiving on Christmas, that's nice stuff. It's an important tradition that we engage in. I'll acknowledge that. But it's the cookie making with our kids. It's the ice skating with our friends. It's the shared meal with our parents. These are the things that we treasure in our hearts. It's the donation that we make to a charity that's working for justice. These are the treasures of heaven. And it's the ways that we give the miracle of Jesus to others. These are the things that make us stop and ponder. Friends, this Christmas, may you find ways to share God's love and grace with others. May you transmit God's love into the life of another this Christmas, somebody who needs God's love. And may your giving be rooted in care and compassion. Amen.